With us today, we have James Easterly, who's going to be giving a presentation, Digging the Details, Researching 101 for Biography Comics. James is an illustrator, designer, and animator from the Detroit area with over a decade of experience. James's work combines influences of 90s anime and hip-hop culture. James is a multidisciplinary artist working with comics, animations, music, and more. He is currently working on the upcoming biography comic Miyazaki and Moebius, The Making of Nausicaä. Everybody go ahead and give him a warm CXC welcome, and here's James.
Great, everybody can hear me?
Yeah.
Woohoo! All right. CXC is probably my favorite comics event probably ever. It's not only in terms of the expo that happens on Saturday and Sunday, which is easily one of the most amazing representations of comics, especially when it revolves around independent comics, which I'm a huge fan of, but especially the fact that Thursday and Friday gets the opportunity to highlight my favorite place to be when it comes to comics history, the Billy Ireland. This is easily one of the most amazing places, especially if you are doing research for comics. This is a place to be. It's one of the reasons why for my comic I've been donating a lot of my research material here so that once I'm done, no one has to nag me for that. They can just nag the staff here for that. So that being said, I do want to put up a disclaimer. So there's one thing I want to be perfectly clear, and there's going to be a couple times when we touch base on this, but I want to be clear that I come from a kind of a different background than the typical person who would typically be doing research and such. So I want to be perfectly clear, first and foremost, I am not an academic researcher, a professional or academic scholar, professional researcher, a professor of history, a librarian, and for goodness sakes, I am not Pikachu. That is my TV, and that is my copy of that VHS tape. And as much as I love to be running around with dinosaurs or punching Nazis, the fact of the matter is, I am a cartoonist. I make comics and other kinds of art, but I know some general best practices for research. So, that being said, let's start digging into the details. And as I mentioned before, as we're doing these touch bases, I want to make sure that we have a shared collective agreement for the most part. We might disagree here and there on things, but a general agreement on terminology so that as we proceed forward through this presentation, we understand where we're going, we understand how things all click together. So let's start off with the big question. What is a biography? So, a nonfiction written history of a person's life. Now, or person's life. So it could be one person, could be multiple persons, and typically this person or person can either be gone or they could still be alive. Many biographies are done while that person's still alive because you want to capture the opportunity to be able to chat with them and get their thoughts on things, because as I'll get later on, one of the best sources of your research is getting it from the horse's mouth themselves. Along with that, it's usually written by someone else, usually an expert in the subject, and includes cited sources and other reference materials. Now I should note, memoirs and autobiographies are by other authors. It's similar in format, but it's kind of a different intent typically. Now you might get the same materials, but you're going to get a more possibly emotional connection from memoirs and autobios. So it's a little bit different from when somebody else is doing the work for someone or about someone else. Now, the fun part, what are comics? Now, I'm going to start with this bottom section here, because actually, by a raise of hands, how many people have memorized that definition? One person. What, did we get another person raising their hand? Kind of, yeah. I'll never be able to memorize that, right? I'm sorry, Scott. But it's a general idea that comics, from my way of how I define it, in a sort of simple form, is it's a combination of words and visuals strung together in sort of a sequential manner that helps convey a narrative. And Scott's a little bit more on the nose with that, but you get the general gist. But along with that, there are multiple different formats of comics, whether it be floppies, trade paperbacks, graphic novels, mini comics, ash cans, zines, comic strips, web comics, mangas, etc. There is a lot of ways we get comics, but they're all comics. They have different intent, but those are all comics in one way or another. So if you are familiar with any of these formats, you know comics. So by raise of hand, who here understands comics? All right, great. Because that means we should understand what biography comics are. So biography comics are presented in the comics format. They can be about someone's entire life or part of it, and they're a fun way to learn about someone's life. As mentioned before, comics are a little bit more of an engaging way to deal with particular subject matters. Because if you're all, as much as I love the opportunity to say a novel and you can imagine something yourself, when you're given the opportunity to see the visuals represented by a creator, you're going to get a different emotional connection, and you might also get nuanced information that might not be easily represented in text in other formats. And also, biography comics and historical nonfiction comics can be paired together in terms of comics about people in history. They're very similar in terms of the formatting and how they're approached, but biographies usually tend to focus on a person or persons. So, picking a subject is a good place to start is asking some questions. And this is something that I had to deal with when I was dealing with my biography comic is there someone you want to do a biography comic about? Now for me, the subject of Miyazaki and Moebius kind of came to me when I ended up finding a particular issue of Nausicaä, and it was the first issue published by Viz in English. It included an interview with Moebius and with Miyazaki talking with each other. And that sparked my curiosity of why were these two people connected? And that ran me down the rabbit hole of a bunch of other things. But along with these questions, you're asking yourself, why do you want to tell their story? Is there some reason that you were drawn to that subject matter? Why is this person important to you? Is there something in their life that really resonates with you or that you feel you want to tell their story? And another thing is, who is your audience? But there's some other questions I want to cover real quick, because as comic creators and people who would be working with comics, these are some other things you want to keep in mind. So, how many pages do you think your book will roughly be? That'll give you a good idea of how big your project will be, how much time you need to invest in with it, because how long do you plan to work on your project? Because I've been working on my project for a couple of years, and I got to tell you, if I had a better idea of where I was going to land with it, I would have loved to have been done with it a lot sooner. But these last 2 points I really want to emphasize for creators, especially independent creators. How much will your project cost? Not just printing cost. And are you self-publishing or working with a publisher? Now, for those who have the benefit of working with a publisher and somebody that is there supporting you in everything that you're doing, it's nice to have I'm blanking on that term right now, but when you have the advance from a publisher, it really helps make sure that your bills are paid and covered so you're not worried about things. But if you're going to be doing it yourself, be mindful of where you're at with things, because it is easy to lose track of your finances if you're not paying attention. And for me, it can be a very, very scary thing if you start worrying too much about where your money's coming from and other things like that. So again, these last 2 points, very emphasized for independent creators. Just make sure you're watching your wallet, watch your time, because you don't want to end up in the hole. So let's dig into some research materials. Sources: library books, history books, existing biographies, newspapers, magazines, website, videos, documentaries, and more. There is a lot of things that you can use for your research materials. But nothing will beat the horse's mouth. Because if you have the opportunity to talk with someone, interviewing people is phenomenal. It could be via email, in person, calls, video calls, etc. Video calls actually, and calls in general, emails, this has been one of the ways I've been able to contact with a lot of people who are not in Michigan, where I'm from. So when I'm talking with Dana Lewis, who's living in Japan, and I have to be up early in the morning so that I can catch her late at night, or vice versa, it's a lot cheaper to do a Zoom call than it is buying a $2,000 plane ticket to Japan. And that makes me happy. So, along with that, speaking of Japan, is researching in other languages. So, since I'm doing a book about Miyazaki Moebius, that includes Japanese and French. So, when applicable, using different languages when researching can help with finding new sources. That's been immensely helpful for me. There's a lot of publications that I have been able to find because of this, because some publications are only available in one language. Along with that, people you know, people you may want to talk with may not speak your language. There was actually a funny instance once where I was contacting a group of Japanese science fiction enthusiasts, and the funny thing was I tried using Google Translate to deal with switching things over, so hopefully they could understand. I got an email back and they said, in English, this is so broken, just send us your message again in English, please. But Google Translate can absolutely save your butt at times, because there's too many things that Google and other resources online will not pick up unless you use other languages. So it is very helpful to use other languages to do your research if you have a subject that crosses beyond just English. So moving forward, important reminders. Document your sources to build a biography. I can't emphasize this enough. Have sources, because credibility with a biography is important. Double check and verify your sources, even people you interview. Too many times, and this is especially true when it comes to hip hop, in August 11th, 1973 is considered the birth of hip hop, but if you talk with a couple of academic scholars on that subject, they will fight over that. And especially if you deal with people who were there around that time, they will argue, no, that wasn't cool, or that was so-and-so, or they'll say someone else was doing X, Y, and Z. Now there's a collective agreements that happen. That is what it is, but it's important to also double check your sources. If you can get multiple people saying the same thing, great, because that at least gives you some validation of things. But make sure you're asking more than one group. And lastly, be patient and respectful to people you contact. That is immensely important. That is probably the most important thing overall when you're dealing with talking with people and asking questions, because a book's not going to fight you. Hopefully. Hopefully. I've got a couple paper cuts here and there. Let's not get into that. But be respectful, be patient, and I'd also say be persistent. Don't nag people if you're trying to get emails and get responses and things of that nature. Take your time, check in with them, maybe a week, 2 weeks, if necessary a month, but be patient, be persistent, and be respectful, because you're going to get people throwing you the world if you show them respect, as opposed to, why didn't you do this, and blah, 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 blah. Show respect, they'll show it back. And lastly, a couple of formatting things in regards to how you document your sources to build a bibliography. That helps just in terms of people who would want to find those sources, having that available so that they can dig into it as well. So, do not do this. Cite Wikipedia. My goodness. How many people have been told in high school or whatnot, do not cite Wikipedia for your research project? Yeah. All right, who is here who graduated from high school before that was a concern that they had to worry about? Yeah, so you were the ones that lucked out on that one. But it's not necessarily considered a credible source. It's kind of a collective of people saying, hey, this is some shared knowledge that we think might be true. And If you're lucky, they might have a cited source for something, but it doesn't always happen. Information may be outdated and wrong, so use it as a starting point if you're going to jump on the Wikipedia and use that as a point of reference. This next point, I promise, I won't soapbox, but I think it's fair enough. How many people are artists in the room? How many people are writers in the room? So I think we all have a shared collective feeling on AI for the most part. Can we agree? So, needless to say, there's a lot of feelings about this, but I had an example recently where every once in a while I humor the idea of what was Moebius's tool of choice when it came to doing his line work. Tossed into Google. Of course, now Google has that AI thing. Made a suggestion, had a cited source, clicked on the cited source. It was a Reddit post. Nowhere in the post was the tool that AI had recommended be the tool that he used. Nowhere in that. So I can't emphasize enough that AI can feed you misinformation. Sources may not be credible. And for those who are Miyazaki fans, he's not a fan of AI either. You see this face? You think he's happy about that? No. So, the next part is figuring out your story. So let's say you've gotten all the materials, you're good to go. Now here comes the fun part is you got to read through all your research material. And come back here for a second. If you got a stack of books that tall, and trust me, I've been there too, it is not fun. But that is where the gold's at. Because that's your opportunity to find your story. Read through your research materials, determine how much of the person's story you want to tell. So with my book, I'm focusing just on the connection between Hayao Miyazaki and Moebius. Key points in history that connected between the two of them. If I was going to try to tell their whole life, I'd probably never get this book done, especially at the pace that I've been going. Plot your script out, and consider how you would want to visually represent your story. The way I approached my book is more of a grand design format. So that's more choosing select moments throughout history to represent how I wanted to convey the connection between these two. But other people might choose moments in their lives intimately strung together, so you're getting more of the moment to moment, every single little thing that goes into it. Whereas for me, again, time-wise, I didn't want to invest that much into it, so I chose what are the most essential moments in history that connected the two of them, and also other elements that would help with the narrative to bring context to why am I telling the story and why are these things important for the overall picture. So, visual research. Now this is the fun part, and also the terrifying part, as I'll get to in the next slide. Similar to researching for general materials, editorial photography and videos are usually reliable sources. Getty Images, if I recall correctly, actually has a feature on their site where you can only get editorial images. So it's a nice resource in terms of you're not getting someone's drawing of something happening. It's no, these are photos taken by journalistic photographers that are trying to document history. Flickr does have some photographers that have posted their stuff up there too, but it's a little bit trickier to find that stuff, especially considering that, this is weird, but even if you search the subject in the search results, it might not pop up, but I digress. And keep track of license holders of works you may use in your comics. That is the thing where you don't want to deal with a lawyer coming at you randomly one day after your book is published and telling you, you didn't say the magic word. So keep track of that stuff, because if you're doing comics on things that are IP, you don't want to, especially if you say like it's a Disney or something where the lawyers can keep you tracked forever, don't mess with that. So either keep track of the license holder so you can reach out and ask for permission, or find creative ways to get around that so that you can still represent the subject without getting in trouble. And here comes the important reminders. I can't wait to tell you about this stuff. Be mindful of how you visually represent people. That's an important thing. Be respectful with how you represent different cultures. I can't emphasize that one enough. Don't sweat the small details if they don't add to the story, and that's where I'm going to tell a fun story about these images here. So these conveyor belts took way too much time. They have zero impact on the overall narrative whatsoever. It's a nice add to the narrative with the caption that it's paired with, but I didn't have to figure out the arrangement of this by going through 1970s videos of airport footage just so I could get that. Also, I did that for the planes too, I kid you not. And the respective airports that they might have been at. But that cash register was a nightmare for me for no reason. 2 whole weeks spent on one cash register that's supposed to be a period accurate Japanese late 70s cash register. I did not need to do that. So thank you to the person on YouTube that posted the 7-Eleven compilation video of commercials from Japan that happened to have that cash register, which I'm pretty sure was in the video where the little girl dropped her ice cream, or no, she dropped her plant and then they put the plant in like a cup for ice. It's a whole thing, but don't sweat the small details. If it's not adding to the narrative, don't worry about it. And don't be afraid to get a little creative with your drawing. There's a lot of fun to be had with certain subjects. Sometimes you do want to be grounded in what you're representing. Sometimes the subject matter needs that because you don't want to get too fantastic. But I have the benefit of doing a comic about comic makers. So I put their works into our reality, and I put them into the reality they created. So when the opportunity presents itself, have fun. If you're going to take a long time to do something, make sure you're having fun with it because you don't want to be beating yourself up about that. And lastly, for this, before we jump into the Q&A, and I'll riff a little bit more here, but I also wanted to include this portion here because along with researching, you also want to be mindful of how you're going to get your book out. And one of the things that I personally struggle with is the fact that when you're dealing with self-publishing or looking to make a book yourself, trying to find a printer can be incredibly difficult. I'm sure, how many people here have printed their own books? Yeah, so how many here have struggled with Google trying to find a printer? So needless to say, this was an issue that I've run into, and even working for a comics printer, I butted heads, but I'm not going to spill tea in that regard. It's nice to have an opportunity to talk with other creators and see who do you use for a printer. But if every time you need to find somebody who has an option for you, if you're messaging them and dealing with all that, you're nagging people for things, and you're always asking, who did you use? After a while, you might only have the same 3 or 4 printer options. So, this was a printer resource that I created last year to help mitigate that. So, it's a list of printer services that I curated based on other printers that other cartoonists have told me I've printed with these people. There's other resources on this as well. And an extra tidbit, if you do a little bit of research of printers locally, the fun thing with printing is it's only the ink on the paper. So if you're worried about, oh, I can't find a comics printer, don't worry. Most printers can print your comic, believe it or not. So even if on their website they don't say comics, you're perfectly fine. So this is something that I've pieced together for the most part that I hope can be a good resource for people to dig into. Just because, it can be tough trying to find some resources. And yeah. So let's see. I'm a little ahead here, so I think, let me think here. Geez, maybe I should have riffed a little bit more on the AI. Let's. Yeah, you know what? Who here has any questions? All right. All right. CB, you raised your hand.
Yeah, did you, what was the highlight of your research so far? And was there any process that you did with Moebius or Miyazaki's work that you learned from actually drawing it and going through the process that way?
All right, I'll repeat the question just so that it's on the record. The first question was,
Did you discover
what
was the most interesting?
What was one of the most interesting things that I discovered while doing my research that really stood out? And then the second question was, while actually illustrating the book, was there anything that I gleaned from Miyazaki Moebius? So for the first question, one of the things that I really was surprised by, and back to the point of misinformation, so there's a person in the book. Here we are. So who here so on the left here, we have Miyazaki. But on the right here, we have the founder and producer of, who here knows the anime Lupin the Third? Who here knows the anime Akira? That studio is TMS Entertainment. They are a powerhouse in the industry. They might not be necessarily as big as Funimation, which is, sorry, not Funimation, Toei Animation, Funimation licensed stuff. But Yutaka Fujioka was a real powerhouse in terms of getting anime created and taking chances, because this guy started off with owning a glove factory. And he said, you know what? It's the 60s going in the 70s. Forget this glove stuff. I'm gonna go, let's try animation for a second. Thank God he did. But when I was doing my initial research and that name was popping up, his face wasn't. Everywhere online was somebody who had a similar name but was a comedic actor. I'm pretty also, Yutaka Fujioka, I've never found a photo with him with facial hair. The actor, full beard, mustache, the works. So one of the things that I'm at least proud of is that there was an account on Twitter that had posted an image of Yutaka Fujioka. It's like a Studio Ghibli fan thing and whatnot. So I took that photo, cropped it out accordingly for every anime news network and style website, and posted it as, no, this is the guy. I want to say most of the time now, if you look up his name on Google or whatever, that image that was posted on Twitter, now it shows up because I did my due diligence to put that there.
Wow.
So it's just, so yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things where if you have the opportunity to, correct people, and it's not like I'm correct, you're wrong. It's no, my apologies, but this is Yutaka Fujioka. That guy is somebody completely different. So that was probably one of the things that I was really proud of. But beyond that, one of the things that I'm really excited about, and it's something that I've been working hard with a lot of rewrites for the book, that is really going to benefit the overall result, is having the opportunity last year to chat with the English translator of Nausicaä, Dana Lewis. She worked with Torrance Smith, with Studio Proteus, and getting an opportunity to chat with her was it was a phenomenal opportunity and experience because I got a chance to chat with somebody who easily made a huge impact on my life, whether I know it or not. Oh, how many people here have heard the manga Lone Wolf and Cub? Dana Lewis.
Wow.
She did the whole thing originally for First Comics, and then when they dropped the license and Dark Horse picked it up, she finished the job.
Oh my gosh.
And the new deluxe edition that's going to be coming out from Dark Horse, still Dana Lewis. Though I do wish they would mention her name on those and not just the Gunsmith cats.
Was there something in that conversation that was exciting or that you didn't know before?
There's a lot of things, I don't want to spoil too much about that per se, but there's a lot of nuanced elements of her connection with Torrance Smith that even though Torn in certain articles had mentioned, he didn't necessarily expand on. So there's subtle little things that having an opportunity to chat with her really made me aware of. It's not just, oh, I met Dana and we chatted about manga and it was great. She gave emotion, she gave context that goes beyond just the nuts and bolts of, I was here, that happened. And it gives me an opportunity. It's one of the reasons why I really like the comics medium. As mentioned in the last presentation, having the opportunity to get that emotion from somebody, it's the benefit of comics. Because, even with this panel or look how happy Tessica is. Look how reserved Kirby is. Or, let's see. Look how pleasantly happy he's reading that comic. There's little things, or how angry somebody can be about something, or how intense somebody can be in the moment, how you set the mood for something. That's the benefit of comics in terms of getting to share the emotion of someone having that experience. So getting the chance to talk with Dana or Frederick Schott or Tom Warzakowski, and even I want to shout out August Ragone. He's not necessarily anybody who comics people may know, but he was one of the attendees at San Diego in 1980 that helped me get better context for what was happening with that event, and a lot of other things that contextually connect the anime fan community to the history of what happened here in San Diego and how that plays into the bigger narrative of kind of like the thesis for my comic is how comics around the world can influence us all. So it doesn't matter where you're coming from. Comics can make a huge impact. Art in general, regardless if it's comics or otherwise, it can come from anywhere. And if you have the opportunity to share that, it's phenomenal.
So did that feeling come out, like you connected those different feelings and expressed that through the art? Were you able to experience that?
Yes. It's fun having the opportunity. I mean, I'm gonna go quick here. I can't tell you how fun it was to do this pose. How many of you have ever carried a stack of books that high?
Right.
And how scared you were when it started to lean a little bit this way, lean, oh no. So getting the chance to convey that energy, it is a lot of fun. And to your second question, as it regards to, did I glean anything from studying Miyazaki or Moebius? Absolutely. I mean, both of them are masters in the craft of Miyazaki, years of animation work, Moebius, years of comics work. I mean, even before he started picking up things like, even before Moebius was Moebius, John Giraud, as doing Blueberry, phenomenal compositions. And then jumping into Moebius, really pushing perspective, really pushing other components of how you build panel to panel and how you build your panels. Not everything has to be a square. I do a lot of squares in my panels. Though I will get to something, actually, I guess this wouldn't be a bad time to plug it, but boy. For those of you who have come here today, I have brought my 2014 Ashcan preview for anybody who would care to have a copy to take home with them today to get a glimpse into the book that will be coming out next year, hopefully by a Kickstarter, so hopefully we get your support there. But one of the big things I think I picked up from them was trying to understand hatching, because Miyazaki definitely cribbed Moebius's hatching style, trying to study hatching, especially with the depth of how Moebius approached his earlier work. Oh my gosh. No. So I am immensely appreciative of the fact that I had the opportunity to learn from that, but I gotta say, I don't know if I want to, after this book, that hatching, I don't know if I want to touch base on that again. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to jump to you next, and I see you in the back as well. So, all right.
I just have, I'm a graphic designer as well as a comic artist. I just wanted to commentate on the printing. All the printer cares about is it color or is it black and white? And is it stable or is it perfect bound? Any printer can print your comic. I know we get in our heads as comic stores like we need a comic printer, but it really doesn't matter to the printer.
Hey.
But I have two questions for you.
Yes.
First, what stage are you at in your book right now? And then second, could you tell us more about the article in that Nausicaä issue that originally inspired it?
Right. So at the moment, I am on page 26 of 36 for the comic, but the full book will be 120 pages because I had the opportunity to do interviews. There's extra back matter. I want to include bibliography and like character references because there's a lot of people that pop up in the comic alone that I want to be able to represent. And then additionally, we're artists, we're comic makers, we want to have some fun, so I want to be able to fill this to the brim with as much, just comics candy, if you would, but also things that would really juice researchers and the opportunity. And also, along with the bibliography, I will be putting a list of all the books that I have been donating to the Billy Ireland in there as well, so that it's one of the things that I really appreciate about the Billy is that if you reach out to the Billy ahead of time, Caitlin, I think you can confirm this, if somebody gives you an ample amount of time and says, hey, I'm looking to get into this kind of material, do you have any of this? You can say, yeah, do you want us to set it aside in the library for you to check out? And if you let them know what time you want to get there, they can absolutely bring it out for you to check out. Caitlin, is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
All right, yeah, no, we got it. So, and then the article itself was initially just a recognition that, whoa, we just found out that Moebius is a fan of Miyazaki. And from there, they set up a phone interview so that the two of them could, chat with each other. Now, prior to this, and prior to me finding this issue, I had no idea the two of them were fans. This was back in 2019. I didn't have context for that. This was nowhere on my radar. Of course, I knew about the two of them, but this article in the back of that first issue really is transformative in showing that people from around the world are more connected than we realize. And there's a lot of things with how these people all connect that I think is it's really interesting, and I hope people will support the book so that I can share that information with people more broadly, because it's fun just seeing how more connected we are together as opposed to how divided we are. So hopefully that answers the question. All right, I think we have.
I was just curious what Moebius's favorite drawing tool was.
I think if I recall correctly, he did prefer nibs, but let me check my sources and double check on that. At this point, I might as well include that as part of the book, just so I can keep myself on point with that. But I feel like it was dip nibs that he ended up using. What specific nib it was, I'm not sure. So I will do my due diligence to ask around. I am connected with the family, so I may be able to tap on their shoulders and say, hey, do you know? But I also, there are, as I mentioned, talking with other people, there are other people who've worked with Moebius that might have that answer. So, and then I think the Starry Night person. And the question was, did I know what Moebius's tool of choice was? And for Lori's question before was, the second part of the question was, what were my initial thoughts on the article? And then the initial question was about what stage my book was at. So, sorry.
I just wanted to know where you start researching in other languages, because I found that Google hasn't been super helpful when attempting to research in other languages.
Yeah, so Google isn't the best. You can hop around with different search engines. If Google Translate and other translator like mechanisms aren't working for you, if you have the benefit of being connected with other people that speak the language, it does help. So I have a friend who actually helped articulate and write a letter, a message I should say, to somebody who was connected with a person in the comic, in the narrative, that only spoke Japanese. So if you don't have, if Google isn't doing you justice, see if somebody else might help who speaks the native language. So in terms of how do you find research material in other languages, if Google isn't doing you justice, see if you can find someone else that speaks the language, or just keep digging. So that's probably what I would say. I'm going to say, is there at least one more question? Okay, I see two more questions. Devin inside your arm.
How far forward into the drawing process do you do your like deep research?
So
while still being like keep on track with your deadline.
Yeah. So the question was, how far ahead do I plan my drawing process as I'm doing the initial research? This has been a learning process for me, so I've been on a curve. So I initially I already had in my mind I was going to use the grand design format. So I kind of cribbed Ed Piskor's sort of formatting for my book, just so that I knew exactly how I was going to handle things. And then from there, in terms of dealing with the time, I'm getting better at that. It's the best way I can put it. So I recommend if you can schedule yourself something, the better. And over here in the blue, wrap over this.
So I was just curious when we were talking a little bit about like primary sources and like your work with Dana Lewis. And this could also probably apply to your project as a whole, but when you're getting work, or like when you're getting information directly from primary sources, how much of, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. I've been up since 3 a.m.
I know the feeling.
Yes. It's hard. It is hard. When you're kind of working in the biographical sphere, how much of your own experience in the research do you integrate into the actual narrative on the page? Like, do you kind of tell your story as you're working? Like, do you tell your story at all when you're explaining the narrative or going through the narrative, or do you really focus on the, like, really Miyazaki and Moebius's work? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think the question is, when doing a biography comic, do you interject yourself and your experiences into the narrative, or do you just keep with the subject matter? So oddly enough, I actually put myself as in the comic as sort of an avatar for the reader to view themselves on, to connect with it, because the way I approached it was, this is me discovering this, and the overall thesis of the book being how we're all connected. This was my opportunity to say, as the reader and as the person who's making this book, I'm now connecting with this narrative. So in a way, because I've been able to share this with all of you, and for those of you pick up this book, now you'll be connected with this narrative. But the fact that we're all here at CXC, we're here at the Billy Ireland, we're all connected with this narrative. So I think there's nothing wrong with interjecting yourself into the narrative, as long as it makes sense and you make sure that it fits with the overall message that you're trying to deliver. So I'm going to zoom through these last couple of slides real quick because I want to highlight a former Talk and Teach that buddy Chris here did before. This is a phenomenal talk that he did. I also want to give a shout out to Caitlin McGurk and Dan Nadell for their talk that they'll be doing on Saturday, correct? So this is another one that I highly recommend people check out. And then let's see, lastly would be Frederick Schott that I had the opportunity to do an interview with. So he'll be bouncing around this weekend, so be sure to check out his panels if you get the opportunity. And last but not least, do not worry if you miss a presentation or panel. I can't emphasize that much. I really wish more people were subscribed to the CXC YouTube channel because there is a treasure trove of information on there that I think everybody needs to get at. So subscribe to the channels, watch, follow, and when you subscribe, hit that bell icon, make sure you see it because you're going to want to revisit these things because say you've asked the question, you've taken notes, or wait, what did James say? What did so-and-so do? And what was that thing from that? Every single panel, for the most part, is recorded by the wonderful media team here at CXC. So I can't emphasize enough, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's a worthwhile investment for you to take the time to get into that. So thank you, everybody, for spending some time with me.